To wrap up our discussion of the rule of 70, there's one more big example that we can take a look at, and I provided the information right here. Suppose that in the year 2012, China's GDP per capita was $3,000, while US GDP per capita was $48,000. And these are pretty close to their actual values. Additionally, China's growth rate was 9%, while the US growth rate was 3%. So here we do notice that one country is starting off with a very small GDP per capita, while one country is starting off with a large GDP per capita, but one country is growing much faster than the other country. So there are two questions that we can actually go ahead and ask from this particular example right here, based on this information. Question number one is, when will China reach current US income? So question number one is, when will China reach current US income? US income, or GDP per capita. The key operating word here is going to be current. So here, current means in year number 0, the year that we start us off. So when is China actually going to reach the GDP per capita level of $48,000, which is where the US is starting us off? So you want to be very careful about the wording with all of this. The second question that we can ask is very similar in wording to the first question, but it means something entirely different. The second question is, when will China match US GDP per capita? US GDP per capita. The key operating word here is going to be match. So in what year are these two countries' GDPs going to be exactly equal to one another? So here, with the way that all these problems work out, there is going to be a year where both of the countries' GDPs do match with one another. So we have to use the rule of 70 and build up a little bit of a table to answer these two questions. So first of all, how would you approach this? You want to go ahead and use the rule of 70. So how long is it going to take for China's GDP to double? How long is it going to take for the US GDP per capita to double? So here, start off with the rule of 70. Rule of 70. First, for China, we take the rule of 70, 70 divided by their growth rate, which is 9%. So just keep that as a 9 right here. And we're going to get 7.77. So here, it's going to take China roughly about 7.77 years for their income to double. And in all these problems that we're going to be dealing with, we want to go ahead and round up our numbers. So here, 7.77 is going to round up to 8 years. We want to get this as a whole number because that will make our analysis much easier to do. So here, anytime you do the rule of 70 with a problem set up this way, you want to go ahead and round up the years. Even if we don't surpass the 0.5 threshold where we normally round up, you always round up the years. Keeping this in mind, we do the same thing for the United States. How long is it going to take for the US income to double? We take 70 divided by 3. So here, the GDP growth rate for the US was 3%, and this is going to give us 23.33 years. And what do? We want to go ahead and round up, so this will give us 24 years. Always round up these numbers with this problem. So here, the United States, their income is going to double every 24 years, while China's income is going to double every 8 years. And based on this information right here, we can go ahead and build up a little bit of a table in order to see more clearly what's happening in terms of China and the US GDP per capita. So here, we'll build this on a new page. Here, we have 3 columns. We have year, we have the United States, or country number 1, and then we have China, country number 2. So year, United States, and China. The easiest one to build up is going to be our year column. So we can start off at year number 0, or sometimes the problem will give us a particular year. Here it says 2012. So we want to go ahead, start off in year number 0, which is 2012. And the easiest way to build up the year column is to take a look at our rule of 70 calculations and take the lesser amount of these 2 years and just start adding it up to the year column. Out of these two, the lower of these two numbers, 8 or 24, is going to be 8 years. So we just want to go ahead and keep on adding 8 years to our year column. So 2012 plus 8 years, move this down right here, 2012 plus 8 years is going to be 2020. 2020, add another 8 years, 2028, and then you just keep on adding years. There's no really set number of years that you keep on adding. You just want to keep on adding years until you answer all the questions properly. So 2036, 2044, 2052, And then we'll stop at 2060. 2060 seems like a good year. It's probably the year I'm going to die because I live a very unhealthy lifestyle. I eat terribly. I don't exercise a lot. So that's going to be a great year. So here we build up the year column by taking a look at the rule of 70 and taking the lower number out of those two. You can add in more numbers by taking the lowest common denominator between these 2 years. So you can actually go ahead and put 2 years if you wanted to build up your year column. But the easiest one to do is just take the lower number here. And then we want to go ahead and fill out the US and China with their respective GDP per capita in the first year. So in 2012, we noticed that US GDP per capita was 48,000, while China was 3,000. So put those numbers down. We have 48,000 for US. We have $3,000 for China. So essentially with this, we use the rule of 70 calculations to see exactly what each country's GDP per capita or income is going to be when they double. We start off with the United States. Every 24 years, their income is going to double. So we start off with 48,000. So 8 years, 16 years, 24 years. So in the year 2036, the US GDP per capita is expected to be $96,000. So $48,000 times 2. In 24 years, US income is going to double. And then we continue on down the line with the entire table. In another 24 years, so 8 years, 16 years, 24 years, at the year 2060, US income is expected to be $192,000 US GDP per capita. So remember, with the rule of 70, it just tells us how long each country's income is how long it's going to take each country's income to double. For the United States, based on the table that we built up, it doubles every 24 years. So 24 years right here, and another 24 years right there. And then we do the same exact task with China. And this is the reason why we take the lower amount of years to build up with our year column, because every single year, every 8 years that we have right here, China's income is going to double. So 3,000 becomes 6,000. In the year 2020, it becomes 12,000. In the year 2028, it becomes 24,000. In the year 2036, and then so on down the line. So 48,000. In 2044, 96,000. In 2052, and then finally 192,000 in the year 2060. So here we've successfully filled out our rule of 70 table with both of these countries. So year, country 1, country 2. And this will actually allow us to answer both of these questions. Question number 1 asks, when will China reach current US income? So when will China reach year 0 US income? As we go down the line, we notice that China is going to reach $48,000 worth of GDP per capita in the year 2044. So it's going to take 8, 16, 24, 32 years to reach current US income. So we'll take China 32 years to reach current US income. To reach current US income. Remember that key operating word there, current. So here, 32 years in the year 2044 for China to reach US income. Second question that we can ask is, when will China match US GDP per capita? So in what year are these two countries' GDP per capita exactly equal to one another? So if we build up this table correctly, there's going to be a year as we read across where these two numbers are going to be exactly matched up with one another. It's not in 2020, it's not in 2012, it's not in 2036, but hey, in the year 2060, we see 192 equals 192. So here, it's going to take China 48 years for the incomes to match. So we'll take China 48 years to match US income. Once again, match means in what year are these two incomes exactly the same? And this is what we should expect to happen in the future if China were to sustain its 9% 9% economic growth rate, and the US were also able to sustain its 3% economic growth rate. So here, these numbers are obviously going to change because we do notice that the Chinese and US GDP growth rates are different nowadays today. So here, this is assuming that these growth rates are going to stay constant over time. But with the rule of 70, as we can see right here, if everything does hold, we should expect US and China to be exactly equal in terms of GDP per capita in the year 2060. So exactly showing you exactly why small differences in economic growth can lead to huge differences in a very short amount of time. It takes China only 48 years, less than 50 years, to essentially match up with US GDP per capita. So with all of this in mind, we've dealt with a lot of examples of the rule of 70. Now we're going to be a little bit more interested in applying our economic analysis and intuition to seeing exactly how we can actually achieve this 9% growth rate or even something higher than that. And we're going to have to go ahead and focus in on our factors of production or resources a little bit more. So we'll take a close look, an in-depth look at all of these factors of production once again in the next few videos.